This is the Untold Italy travel podcast, and you are listening to episode number 226.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week, your host, Katy Clarke, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and, of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Ciao a tutti and welcome to a very special episode of Untold Italy. Today we're going to take a trip to Turin with our friends Olivia and Andrea from Italian Wine Tales. This episode is airing a little before a very special day for them and the next chapter in a lifelong adventure that started in the city that we're talking about today, Turin, or Torino as it's called in Italian. I've noticed a lot more questions and interest in this beautiful northern city, and I thought who better to tell you about it than our friends, one of whom was born there and lived there most of his life, and someone who adopted the city and I guess was adopted by it too in a difficult time. But somehow there was a spark in Torino that led to some amazing things. I can't wait for you to hear all about lovely Turin and the reasons why you should go there from such a great couple. So let's jump in. Bentornati, Liv and Andrea. Ciao and welcome back to the Untold Italy podcast. I hope you've been keeping well.
Ciao, Katy. Buongiorno. Yes, very well.
Quite good.
We're just back from a trip to Torino, actually.
Yes.
I know. And it's not long now until there's a very special day on the horizon for you both. Do you mind sharing what's coming up and a little bit about yourselves and what you do in general?
So Katy is, of course, talking about our upcoming wedding, which is on the 8th of June. So, yes, not too far away in beautiful Umbria, actually.
In Gubbio.
Little
Ciao.
But just to introduce ourselves, so I'm Olivia. I'm an Australian, as you can hear from my accent. I thought I was going to live in Italy for a year. 5 years later, fast forward, I met Andrea during that first year and fell in love with the country and just kind of never looked back. And together we run a wine website called Italian Wine Tales where, we try and educate people all about the wonderful world of Italian wine. And, we were living in Turin Andrea's from Turin. He'll tell you that next. But we were living there for a while. And, we moved down to Rome about 2 years ago. And now we're getting married in Umbria. So kind of somewhere in between.
And I'm Andrea. I was born and raised in Torino until I met Olivia. We lived there together for a bit, and now we're living in Rome. I am taking the sommelier course with Liv so that we can explore more about the Italian wine world, and we try to share our passion and our knowledge with the people that follows us and that share this passion with us.
Yeah, amazing. Now, of course, Liv is also a very big part of the Untold Italy team and a very, very important part of it. And though we do usually have you on the podcast to talk about wine, but today I thought to celebrate your upcoming marriage that we could share the city of love, the beautiful city of Turin, where you met and spent the first years of your relationship together with our friends on the podcast. So how does that sound?
Oh, sounds like a plan.
Beautiful.
Back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Because I've actually noticed a huge increase in interest about your hometown, Andrea. And, of Liv, as you mentioned, you were there just last weekend hosting our tour there. So I think we're truly ready to show the love for Torino. And I think people are ready to hear it because it's one of those cities that flies under the radar. And it's like, why? It's so easy to get to. It's so beautiful. So, Andrea, as you're the local, why don't you kick things off and let everyone know where Turin is and why it's such an important city in Italy?
My pleasure. So Turin is in the northwest of the country. So imagine north of Rome and Florence and west of Venice and Milan. You will find it right there near the Alps. It's bordering with France on the west and Switzerland on the north. So it's not on the sea. It's close to the mountains, and it's I would say little, but not too little, charming town. It's one of the biggest towns in Italy, really. But for Australian or American standards, appear quite small. Around 1 million people live there. It's important in Italy because of its historical value. It was the first capital of Italy back in the 19th century. And it grew and grew and grew more till to this day with its economy, and a lot of people emigrated there, especially after World War II for working reason. We had the Fiat, which we might know for cars that are being produced, like the infamous 500, the Fiat 500 was produced there. And nowadays, as you said, it flies a bit under the radar when it comes to tourism. So, of course, everyone goes to Venice, to Rome, to Naples, or to Milan. And not many people go to Turin, which is totally fine because
the Torinese
people
way.
like it that way. To be honest, when you go and visit Venice and Florence, you fall in love with them because they are beautiful and they're charming. Turin, it's beautiful because often when I met foreigners there or tourists, they go there without expecting much and they are taken aback by what's there to see and like the style. And it's often said that it's the most elegant town in Italy, which I'm a bit biased, so I will not say whether it's true or not, but come and see it for yourself because I feel it's worth a visit for sure.
It is so pretty. And for me, and being Australian, and I don't know how you felt about this, Liv, when you first arrived, but having those mountains with the snow caps on the top in the background, it's a little bit of a wow moment because we certainly don't have that at all where we're from, and it's just very pretty.
It's so different, yeah. Seeing the Alps, especially on a clear day when they don't have the famous Torinese nebbia or fog, it's breathtaking having the Alps in the background. It really is.
And so you mentioned, Andrea, that it was the first capital of Italy, but it's had a lot of royal past as well, and that's really shaped the architecture and the style of the city, hasn't it?
Yes, you are correct, because the history of Turin, in general, it's linked with the royal house of Savoy, which was the royal house where the kings came from, which unified Italy in 1861. But before that, for centuries and centuries, they ruled over Turin and Piedmont in general, the region where Turin is the capital, and parts of France as well. So it's elegant, and we have royal palaces because of that, because the king used to reside in there. And so we have a lot of royal palaces both in Torino and around the outskirts of the city. There are a lot of beautiful palaces. You will find, for example, that the Baroque style of Turin might resemble a bit the French one because of the closeness of the two countries and because there was a lot of French influence in the region due to the proximity of it. So if you like French style, come and see, enjoy it. But never say to the people in Turin that it reminds you of France, because people in Turin will not appreciate it because of past history.
Wars against France.
Yes.
They're very Italian, or no, really more Torinese, aren't they? Like, Italy is such a young country. It's hard to explain that to people when, I think, Italy, we've got a familiar shape of the boot and all of that, but it's very, very new. And, like the ancient history it's like centuries and centuries of being very localized. So that's what I love about it, because, we can be talking about Puglia 1 minute and have it's completely different to Piedmont and Turin. And I love it. And I love the vibe of Turin. So what do you think is a vibe?
Oh, it's hard for me to describe because I've been living there. Maybe you see it from the outside.
I think it's so elegant and sophisticated. It feels very grown up. When I first moved to Italy, I was in Bologna, which is a really fun and friendly university town. And then afterwards I went up to Turin, and it immediately felt more grown up, sophisticated, beautiful fashion. We're only an hour from Milan and Turin, so it's very stylish. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I would say. And they've got something I noticed when I went back this recent trip that some of our guests were really noticing too, is they've got this fascination with neon as well, neon signs, like the martini sign lit up. And there's lots of other neon kind of pops of colour that really are quite striking in between these beautiful historic buildings and covered galleries. And, I love the vibe of Turin. It feels very... elegant, a little bit Parisian, but not Paris, if you know what I mean.
The sense that I got there was actually quite more open than a lot of the other cities. So you don't have those very small, apart from in the old town, you have the more wider boulevards.
That's true. You're right. Now that I think of it, you're right. There are a lot of places in Italy where you have like the narrow roads and stuff. You don't really have that in Turin. I guess because especially during when it was built and in the 1500s, 1600s and so on, they used to do bigger roads, a bit like in a French style, as I said. So the old town, just the very, very historical old town, which was built by the Romans, which is still called the Roman Quarter, we could say, still had those narrowish road, but just that.
Yeah, it's true.
And what I like about it, coming from a tram city myself, is that they do have trams to get around, and they're really cute little ones, aren't they? I love them.
Me too. I love it. The classic orange.
The classic orange trams, yes.
I love them.
And the other one thing that I really noticed is the cafes. You have cafes all over Italy, but these ones are especially elegant and I think very refined, and you feel a bit fancy when you go there.
Coffee culture in Turin as well. It is like up here, number one. Like when you go into these beautiful bars, there's chandeliers everywhere. There's frescoes. You know, it's not just having a coffee in some kind of dingy place, if you know what I mean. It is an experience.
Yes.
Do you have some favourite cafes there?
We have the cafes in the center, of course. You must try at least once, like Caffè del Cambio or La Farmacia del Cambio, or, for example, the very historical one, which is the bicerin in Piazza della Consolata, where they first created this special coffee, this special drink, which is called, in fact, bicerin. Bicerin means, in the Piemontese dialect, little glass, because it was served in a little glass. And it's a mix of coffee with chocolate and some whipped cream. And you don't have to stir it, absolutely not. You queue up and you drink it there in this beautiful historical place. It's been the same, like, I guess from the 17 or 1800s. It still feels super old. They have candles on the table. They have chandeliers. It's historical. It's charming. It's everything you want to have when you take a coffee and you want to feel like you're having an experience.
And one of my favorite ones as well that is a little bit less touristic, but it's a place that Andrea used to take me all the time when we first started dating. It's in this beautiful Piazza Vittorio Veneto called Caffè Clarissa.
That's true. If you want to have a good slice of cake or a pie, that's your go-to place, especially if you visit in winter. It's a must.
It is delicious. All of their beautiful cakes, coffees and teas. Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And the only other one that I'll mention, there's so many, we could have a whole episode just about cafes and bars in Turin, is a little chain, but it's a chain just in Turin called Berlica Barbis, which I love this because, thank you, Andrea, because it's a Piemontese word that he taught me that means to lick your mustache. But you know that it's the mustache you get from milk that's all over your lips, which I love it. So if you want to say it like a Piemontese.
Berlica Barbis, and then you go there, you have coffee, tea, cake, very good cake as well. And it's worth trying.
Yeah.
Why can't we have a word like that in English? I think that's cute.
So perfect.
So I think, the bicerin, though, you have to have this drink. And I actually think, I don't know when you're traditionally supposed to drink it. Is there a time of day that it's the best time to drink?
I would take it more in the morning just because it's a bit heavy, to be honest. So maybe you don't want it later on in the day.
Or if you want an extra shot of energy in the afternoon, you could also have a bicerin.
Yeah.
It worked for me. Like, I was like, you get the chocolate and the coffee and you're like, whoa. It's such a good drink though. I mean, we're not talking watery coffee or, it's a really good, very high quality, and it's like a little very big shot of energy.
Yeah, now that you mentioned, sorry, I was thinking that, as you said, there is the shot of chocolate and stuff, because another important part of the culture in Turin, as you know well, Katy, is the chocolate one. And the giandiuotto, which is the typical chocolate that is produced. It's shaped like a little lingot, and it's found all over the city. And now it's famous for it and stuff. But back in the days, like 1700s or 1800s, chocolate making was a big part of the economy of the city. Like, if you were a chocolate maker, you were rich. And I mean rich, so much so that there is still a saying to this day. of the story, like when in the 1700s they used to go to theater and everything. It was like a big showing up to the red carpet, right? And one day the king arrives with his beautiful carriage with 4 horses at the front, and everyone's like astonished by this beautiful carriage. Right after, a chocolate maker, one of the most famous in town, arrives, and his carriage is carried by 6 horses. The next day, the chocolate maker had all his belongings, all his property and goods taken away from him, and he was banished from the kingdom. And so still to this day, we have this saying in Turin, which is fare la figura del cioccolataio, which may literally translate to make the figure of a chocolate maker, but the meaning is to make a fool of yourself. Because make the figure of a chocolate maker, you didn't really do the right thing. You did a bit of a faux pas.
Yeah, exactly. I love that story.
You didn't cover yourself in glory. You needed to be a bit more humble.
Yeah.
But let's face it, the chocolate is good. It's so good. I'm a little bit obsessed with one, the Gobino. I'm like, literally, I said to Liv the other day, she asked me if I wanted some. I said, I want some, but I don't need some. It's so good. I don't know how to describe it other than it's like kind of solid, but not hard, like very luxe Nutella.
Yes.
It's like what Nutella would be if it grew up and was got some better ingredients and just sort of got a little bit harder. I can't stop eating them. Like, isn't it you're supposed to put it in your mouth and leave it there for 3 minutes?
Yes, it's like when you're a kid, you just put it in your mouth, you bite right into it, but when you grow up, you want to savor it a bit more, so you leave it on the tongue and you leave it to melt, and it's nice. It gives you a beautiful chocolate taste in the mouth.
Because it's the hazelnut as
yes,
well.
It's a nice little treat to have every now and then during the day.
Yeah, it's delicious. We love them.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can stop at one, though. That's my problem. I'm like, oh, my God, it's so good. All right, so Turin is a big food city, and it's probably not well known. I mean, like all Italian cities have their own food culture, and yeah, Turin's is more of that elegant. I love the aperitivo there too. Oh.
Yes, and I was thinking that it's true. There is a bit of everything in Turin. For example, there is, if you are into history, there is a lot of like the Egyptian Museum, which you would never really thought, but like is the second biggest in the world. Or there is the Cinema Museum, there is the Car Museum, because not just museums, of course, but like all these museums are because there is a big culture in the city out of these topics. But in the last 20 years, I would say so, as you correctly said, Turin has started to invest a lot into food. And it's where a lot of important movement have come out of it. For example, the slow food movement comes out of Turin, where they try to rediscover food grown locally. So not fast food, but like produced locally and enjoy in a proper way as it's meant to, like respecting the traditional way of doing it. Or the Italy, which now is a big global brand, but it was originally created in Turin to put on the shelves of the supermarket like actually good products that you can rely on. So there is a big food culture now, for sure, which I really like. There is good wine in the region itself, and a particular thing of Turin that is one of the only 3 places in the world with, I think, Paris and Vienna, where you have a vineyard which is grown in the city. So
yeah, that's cool.
If you visit this place called Villa della Regina, which was used to be a lot of things, this royal palace, of course, where it was a queen villa, there is a big garden on the hill facing the city center. And on one of the hills, they still to this day grow the wine and they sell it.
And that's where Andrea's grandmother also went to school, with the Queen's daughters.
Oh, very fancy. Very fancy. Yeah, I think it's amazing. I really enjoyed eating there, actually, because there's a lot of great antipasti. And so you can try lots of different things and some unexpected things too, like I guess the Russian salad and the vitello tonato. And like we've done an episode on the food of the region, and you can go back and have a listen to that. But it's a really interesting place to go if you especially just want to go and try a few little bits. And obviously the pasta there is pretty good too.
The tajarin or the agnolotti. And when it's truffle season, of course, you've got the white truffles being shaved on top, which makes everything better.
Absolutely.
I think up until recently, and of course Turin was hosted the Eurovision Song Contest a few years ago, but up until recently the thing that people knew most about Turin was the Shroud of Turin, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And it's still there in one of the main churches of the city. You can visit it. I don't remember now if they expose it every once in a while, but I'm pretty confident that they still do that. But you can still visit the church where it's preserved.
In the Duomo.
In the Duomo, the main church.
But when you visit it, just so you're clear though, you can only visit where it's in the box.
Yes.
It's not on display because it needs to be preserved.
There are copies of it. Of course, but the original one gets shown every 7 or 10 years, or whenever the Pope decides that they want to story
release
goes that this shroud, which for everyone that doesn't know, it's supposed to be the linen cloth where the body of Jesus was wrapped in after he was taken off the cross. It was gifted or purchased by the Royal House of Savoy and has been conserved in Turin. Now, we will not go into the historical or religious details, of course, but if you are into that and if you believe in it, you can visit it in Turin. And that, as Katy said, it's what Turin was mostly famous for.
And actually, though, if someone does want to see that, because we had some interested guests on our recent tour, and our wonderful guy Carlotta, who's been on some other episodes, she was saying that for the Jubilee next year, they are talking about releasing the Shroud. So keep your eyes peeled for any news on that if you want to go and see the Shroud. You'll be very, very busy, though, if you do.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it will be. Isn't it that his face appears on the material as well? Like it's the image of
his whole body.
Front and back, really, because for how...
It's the whole... I thought originally it was just the face too, but on our tour, Carlotta was explaining it's the whole sheet that was wrapped from his feet all the way over the head and to the back. So it's huge, this long sheet.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. Having been inside the Duomo, it's a beautiful church in its own right. It's... there's obviously a very interesting story behind it, and you could probably dedicate several podcast episodes to that. But anyway, there's so much and so many other things to say. You mentioned some of the museums, but I really like we went to the Palazzo Madama, didn't we? And that was, I loved that.
So I've got the best way to describe this now, which I can't take credit for because, again, Carlotta branded it as this way. She described it as the ladies' party's house because it was the Queen's house. So the King got his beautiful big palazzo in the main Palazzo Reale in the main royal in the main square, and literally next door was an old castle that the Queen wanted to redo, I guess, and so they hired an architect who never ended up finishing the job. So on one side is an old medieval castle, and then the other facade is this beautiful kind of modern-day looking palace, Palazzo Madama, and he never ended up finishing it. He was called back to Sicily, I think, or
I think so.
He went somewhere else because he was from Sicily, the architect. But it's really cool because now you've got this amazing view of one side's medieval and one side's like a modern-day palace. Yeah. And anyway, that's where the Queen, it was her palace, and, she had all of her parties there and that kind of thing. And you can go and visit and you can get a beautiful view, which is what Katy and I did when we were in Turin together. If you go all the way up the top, you can see the Alps over the city, and it's just spectacular.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. And I think one of the really amazing things about it is when you say modern day palace, Liv, it's more 18th century, I think. But it's not medieval. But it's got an incredibly beautiful staircase inside that people get their wedding photos taken there too, don't they?
Yeah. In fact, we were considering
at the beginning
getting married there, but anyway.
You can get some photos done there. We know a good photographer. Shout out to Rihanna there. And what else can you do in Turin?
Well, you can do a lot of stuff. I think that I love, for example, when it comes to food still, it's to visit the biggest open-air market in Europe, which is in Turin, and it's in Porta Palazzo. And you have this huge market on a very big square. We especially go to the section of the contadini, of the farmers, which is in front of a beautiful fishmonger as well. And when we lived there, when we used to live there, we went there every Saturday. We knew all the farmers, and it was beautiful. And you can buy properly freshly produced
kilometer zero products.
And right also in that market, there is a little Barolo, like a little bottle shop, alcohol shop, that sells vermouth, locally produced vermouth, because vermouth was invented and firstly produced in Turin. And this place still produce their own vermouth with their own specific recipe, which I absolutely love vermouth. So I would definitely, if I were a tourist, go around, enjoy the market, enjoy the vermouth, enjoy the drinks, and have a walk around the city to get a feel of what it feels like. Because one of the things I appreciate the most of Turin, if you're a foreigner, is that, for example, in a lot of places like Rome or Milan, if you speak English, for example, no one will look at you twice because they're so used to having tourists, which is absolutely normal. While Turin, and I think this gives you a bit the idea of how untouched by tourism a bit still is, if you speak English in the street, people turn around and look at you like thinking, what are you doing here? Like, we're not expecting tourists here. So I appreciate this because, unfortunately, we were in Florence recently as well. And one of the sad things is that some of the beautiful roads in the city center have been completely taken over by these shops that open and close every 2 weeks. And they just sell paninis. And it's unbearable for both the people that live there, but also for tourists that want to have a real experience and like not feeling like they're just scammed or like
the cash machine.
Exactly.
Tourism.
They want to enjoy a place where people live and it's a real place with real people living in it. And I think that Turin can give you all of that.
And some other beautiful places that some of our guests on the recent tour for Untold Italy loved exploring was the Mole Antonelliana.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We didn't mention it now.
Yeah, which is like the symbol of Turin.
It is the symbol of the city. It's hard to describe. It's not a tower and it's not a skyscraper. You have to think about this dome starting from the ground up. And when it reaches the summit, there is a long tower on the top. You have to look it up. It's called Mole, M-O-L-E, Antonelliana. It used to be a synagogue. It was built as a synagogue. But then when the project was finished, the Jewish community decided not to purchase it. And so the city hall decided to extend the project, building this tower up the top. And it served different purposes. And it's now the Cinema Museum, the National Cinema Museum. So if you're a cinema fan, you can go and visit. But even if you're not, I would recommend going there because you can take a lift, which will take you right up the top. And you can see the city center of Turin from above and the surrounding hills and the mountains on a beautiful day. And it's breathtaking experience. I love it. I'm a bit biased, I know, but it's worth
It's
visiting.
beautiful,
Yes.
But if you're going to do that, you must book tickets in advance because that is always sold out. It's very popular.
I'll let you in a little secret now. So if you want to see Turin from above, from the city center without queuing up, there is another way to do it. You just need to have a good pair of legs and do a bit of steps. But if you go to the Duomo, where the Shroud of Turin is, there is, of course, a bell tower. You have to go through the museum there. There is also a museum. You don't really have to visit the museum. You can just purchase a ticket to go on top of the bell tower. And walking up this bell tower, which is around 200 or 300 steps, so it's a bit of a walk, but then you end up being in the dead center with mountains and city on every side. And also there are signs on each 4 sides explaining what you're looking at. And it costs less than the mall, and it's not crowded, not touristy as going up the mall. So
it's a good tip.
That's a good tip.
And there's a few other beautiful viewpoints as well that we haven't mentioned. There's the Monte dei Cappuccini.
That's a very romantic spot, the classic
very romantic
spot,
where Andrea has taken me before. Again, you walk over Piazza Vittorio Veneto, which is one of the main beautiful piazzas, over the River Po.
Yeah, you cross the river.
And then you see in front of you, you'll see the Gran Madre, which is a beautiful church modeled after the Pantheon in Rome. And if you keep walking towards the right, kind of up a little bit of a hill, so you do
not much, though, don't worry.
Not much. You do have to have a good pair of legs, though. You'll get to this other church, which is a beautiful viewpoint because it looks back out over the city and over the river.
Yeah.
So that's really lovely too. And then we're talking a lot about churches. We will talk about other things, but we have to also mention Superga, which is, Andrea?
Superga was built in the 1700s. Is this another church, but not because of the church itself, but because it's on top of a hill where you can see the whole city from afar, not from the city center, but from afar, and the mountains at the back and the river, and it's the best viewpoint to see all of Turin. It's worth visiting. You need to take either a bus or a car, or there is also in the weekends, I'm sure in the weekend, maybe also during the week, a little train. They will take you up. It's very charming. It's very characteristic. It will take you up this hill in the middle of a wood and will leave you right at the entrance of this church.
But wherever you go in Turin, in the distance, you'll always see Superga, this big basilica.
Yeah, this church. It's not big, the church itself, but
you'll see it wherever you are. Yes. Though. It watches over the city, so you know you're in Turin. It's like, presence. When you're in East Sicily and you always see Etna. In Turin, you always see the Superga church. It's always watching.
And all I can think of is that what the trainers are named after? Because the Superga sneakers.
I think you are right. Yeah, probably, because I think it's from a brand, which we will not mention, but that brand that owns Superga, it's from Turin.
Ah.
So I think you might be right. Never really made a connection, but yes. So it would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, but there's so much to do. So whether you're into history with the palaces, the churches, cars with the Fiat Car Museum,
or mysteries.
Oh yes, we have to talk
Turin
about
is
this.
a city of mysteries as well. There is this story of Turin.
And magic.
Yes, of magic. Black and white magic. So there is this history. There are tools as well that do it. You can do it in the city of the history of black magic. Turin being the link between the triangle of cities of black and white magic. There is this imaginary triangle between Turin, London, and Lyon in France, which is the city of black magic, and one other with Turin, Prague, and I don't remember, maybe Vienna. I don't remember which one, which is the triangle of white magic. And there are different areas in the city where you have symbols, which you wouldn't really consider twice. But then once you go there and you visit them and you learn about the history of these places, you think like, oh, well, wait a second, this is like pretty particular, pretty interesting. There are a lot of, like, for example, Freemasons references. There is a lot of history, both with the king being there and Catholics and the church being a big part of history. But as well, in the 1600s, they had this tendency of wanting to find alchemical secret alchemists. So, for example, in 2006, we had the Winter Olympics in Turin. Big thing, everyone was so excited, and they started to dig up the whole town to make underground parkings because people had to park their cars. And they started to create this underground parking in the city center near the Palazzo Reale, where the king used to live. And they found these grottos, these caves, that were used to do alchemical rituals, which are still studied to this day. They're not accessible to the public because they're still digging them up and studying them 20 years later, because they're still trying to figure out what the hell they were doing, because these grottos are not mapped anywhere on the architectural plans of the age. Yeah, you can find a bit of mystery if you look into it a bit.
Yeah,
nice.
And even if you're into like war history, something interesting that you want to explain about that?
One of the main squares is Piazza San Carlo, where, by the way, Katie, we forgot to mention, there's a beautiful cafe, Caffè San Carlo, where you can enjoy a coffee in the piazza. Of course, it's going to be expensive, but it's worth it. If you go to Piazza San Carlo, on one of the corners of the piazza, you will see that on the facade of a building, you will find cannonballs lodged into the building. Because Turin fought many wars against the French and stuff. And during one of these wars, the French seized the city and started to bomb Turin. And they were so close to the center that they were actually bombing the buildings in the center. And some of those bombs, back at the days where were just literally like metal balls shot out of a cannon, they lodged into the city walls. And some of them are still in there. Even when they renewed the facade, they left it there as a historical hint of the past.
And what about the underground, the resistance?
See, there are a lot of things, especially Turin was important during the resistance in World War II. You can visit the Resistance Museum. Part of the tragedy of World War II, but Turin was important into the uprising and the resistance movement. So there is an important resistance museum for the role that the city and the region in general played during World War II. I would visit it and try to learn more about all the curious little histories and stories, especially that the city has to offer. For example, one that I think one of my favorite, it's the story of like bread, because no one really associates Turin with bread. But the sandwich bread originates from Turin because back in the days, there used to be the executioner, of course, in Turin. And the bread makers, the bakers, never wanted to have the bread, give the bread to the executioner. So the classic loaf of bread, which was flat on one side and round on the other, was served upside down to the executioner. And the executioner hated it. So he went to the king and said, look, you have to stop this. And so the king created this famous law that said, for all the bakers that don't want to have the executioner as their client, they're going to be the client of the executioner. And so they created this shape of bread, which was like a cube, a dice. Imagine a dice of bread. So in this way, you never knew if it was served up or down. A few years later, the French invade Turin. They find this beautiful and weird kind of bread. They take it to France and they make it longer. They just elongate it. And this is what we use now as the shape of bread, which is already the sandwich loaf to make sandwiches.
And it all came from Turin.
Yeah, from the executioner.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I love these little stories. They're so characterful. It makes the city come alive. Oh, I really loved it. Now, if someone was going to stay in Turin, where was the best place for them to stay so they could, best area so they could go and explore the city easily, probably on foot, I'd say?
There's a few different ideas. You can either stay close to the train station, so Porta Nuova, because there's 2 train stations. That's the more central one. If you do stay there, though, you will have to walk a little bit further or be happy to get taxis. Otherwise, you could stay in the old Roman area, the Quadrilatero, which is beautiful and charming if you like those cobblestone streets and kind of that medieval vibe. Otherwise, you can stay also in Piazza Carlina.
Brava,
Piazza Carlina is right in the city centre, and that's a really good kind of midway point if you want to go into the Roman Quarter or if you want to go, to the main shopping street, Via Roma. That's another thing we haven't mentioned. You can do shopping. Is amazing in Turin. That's kind of a nice halfway point. So I would recommend one of those areas.
And you mentioned the train station, and I think it's really worth mentioning to people because it's actually not that far out of the way. People think, I've got to make a big trek, but it's only a 1-hour train ride from Milan, and it just makes it not that far from Rome either because you can go zip through pretty quickly, can't you?
Yeah, to get to Rome is about 4.5 hours on the fast train. So that's not too bad either.
Or an hour on the plane, even less, really.
Yeah, exactly. Or you could fly, which is really, really close, an hour. They've got an airport in Turin. Yep. But being close to the train station, you can also do some day trips to other places.
In the region.
In Piedmont. So you could go to Cuneo, which is kind of like a mini Turin. I really like it. It's charming. There's nothing in particular to do there, but wander around. And they've got a big coffee culture and they've got their own chocolates, which you won't find in Turin, but they're delicious, especially if you like rum.
Yes.
They're called the Cunesi al Rum and they're filled with rum and they're very alcoholic and chocolatey.
In winter, they're perfect because
they will
heat you up really quick.
So they're really delicious. So Cuneo is a nice kind of place to go maybe for the day and wander around, and there's really nice vibe, nice markets.
And then of course there is the Langhe region. You can take a train to Alba, which is the capital of the region, we can say, and the Langhe region is especially famous for beautiful wine.
The only thing with that is that there's not a direct train to Alba, so you will have to change trains. Getting to the Langhe region, besides Alba, you really need a car.
Yes.
It's not serviced well by public transport. So, if you want to do wine tasting or anything like that, you absolutely need a car. The only other place that might be interesting via the train is Asti, which if you're into sparkling wine or, medieval towns, they also have the Palio in Asti, not just in Siena. So in September, you could go and see the famous horse race in Asti. And you can get there. It's like half an hour on the train. It's really close from Turin. So there's some nice places to go. But otherwise, I would say Piedmont is the region best with the car.
I really fell in love with Turin. I wasn't there for very long, but I love the vibe of it. I just found it really different. I'd just come from Venice, and Venice is also a very elegant city, but it's completely different. It's, built on the water as well, but it's just such a charming city. Now, I need you both to do me a favour. Can you name a favourite spot in the city What's your favourite place?
Mine would be maybe where we had our first kiss, which was right outside Piazza Castello, which is just beautiful. In the evening, it's very romantic because they have all the old lamp lights, and you've got the Royal Palace there, the Palazzo Madama there. They've got a beautiful fountain in the centre, and yeah, kind of that dusk hour is very romantic. So I love that place.
I would go for a place called Largo 4 Marzo. A Largo is like a piazza, but a bit smaller. It's in front of the Duomo, but it's in this Roman neighborhood in the Quadrilatero. And it's beautiful because in summer you have all the trees and the restaurants where you can eat outside, sitting outside. There is music played outside. And it's the most relaxing thing you can do in summer or in spring as well. Sitting out, eating, enjoying the music, enjoying the warm weather with friends, with the people you love. Whatever I think about when I want to have some good time, I would go there and eat there. And it's the best thing you can do.
There's a really nice restaurant, if anyone's going, that is very casual in that piazza. It's called Cianci. So that's a nice one to look up too.
Another thing, if you see places called Piola or Piole, it's because you are all famous. You all know probably the trattoria. The trattoria here and there. In Piemonte, the trattorias are called Piole. So if you hear, for example, Piola da Cianci, it's the name of the trattoria.
Yes, very bespoke to Turin, Piedmont.
Yes.
Oh, they both sound perfect. Oh, Olivia and Andrea, thank you so much for sharing all your insights into Torino with us today. It's a really lovely city, and I think everyone should go visit. You know, like, it's an easy detour, and we often say on this podcast, even if you're going to see the main cities, like, do a little detour to somewhere. And this one's so easy. It's just 1 hour from Milan, and you can just get on the train, and it's completely different to Milan, completely different, and you'll have a beautiful, beautiful time. Now, I know the Untold Italy listeners would love to stay in touch with you and learn more about the Italian wine and, of course, Turin. What's the best way for them to do that?
So you can have a look at our website, which is italianwinetales.com. We've got an Instagram page, Italian Wine Tales. We've got a Facebook community, Italian Wine Lovers. And I've also got an Instagram, Livguini, so Livguine, if you want to have a look at maybe some wedding photos too. Although we'll keep that to the minimum.
Pictures of Turin as well.
Pictures of Turin and, yeah, all of our tours and other places we go with Untold Italy.
Well, it's my duty now to wish you all the very best for the wedding. I know I'm going to be there in person, but on behalf of all the Untold Italy listeners who tune in every week, I know many of them would love to wish you a beautiful day. And grazie. Thank you so much for joining us on Untold Italy, as always.
Thank you, Katie.
Can't wait to see you.
We can't wait. Not long now. It's a big pleasure to be on the show again. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait to see you both too. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, Katie. Grazie. Ciao.
I hope you enjoyed hearing about Turin and its curiosities, everyone. I was certainly charmed by this gorgeous city, and of course, I now feel the connection there strongly thanks to Liv and Andrea. And I know I speak for all of us on the Untold Italy team and you, our dear listeners, when I wish them all the happiness in the world together as a married couple and many more trips to Turin to visit family and friends, and of course, to aperitivo and perhaps get me some more of that delectable chocolate. Of course, if you're keen to explore Turin some more, we've provided all the places mentioned in this episode and Liv and Andrea's details in our comprehensive show notes at untolditaly.com/226 for episode 226. Grazie mille. Thanks for your ongoing support of Untold Italy. We truly appreciate all of you, our listeners, joining us from around the world. If you do have a spare moment, we would appreciate it if you left us a 5-star rating and review on your favourite podcast app. That way we can reach more Italy-loving travellers just like you. It's such fun to receive your notes and messages when we get them, and we just absolutely love them. So don't be shy. Go ahead and leave your review. We do appreciate it. Now, next week on Untold Italy, we're delving into the wonderful world of zingi pesto, one of the world's best sauces, in my humble opinion, which has been pounded and perfected in the lovely Liguria region. So tune in next week to hear all about it. And until then, it's ciao for now.
The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production.
Podcast editing, audio production, and website development by Mark Hatter. Production assistance and content writing by the other Katy Clarke. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.